Matches below.
Hey, what is up, guys? Max Balone here, bringing you guys a movie review. Today, we're going to be talking about the DC animated feature film, Batman the Killing Joke. So, before we get into actual movie review, there's a couple of things I want to say. First off, a movie review is essentially a person's opinion, right? Their likes and dislikes could differ from you in every which way, and it doesn't necessarily make the reviewer wrong, and it doesn't necessarily make the audience wrong. You know, it's just people have different opinions and different views of the body of work. And the other thing I want to talk about is the Killing Joke itself, the graphic novel. The story is very beloved. It is a classic. It's an essential Batman story that a lot of people hold it in high regards, and I fully understand that. But this is still, a movie. This is still a story, and this is still up for critique. So even though I might say things that I fully understand are going to be the less popular opinion, if you will, and I'm opening myself up to attack from essentially everybody, um, you know, this is the subject matter, and I can't change my opinion on it just because this is the Killing Joke or this is super important. Like, because it's such an important body of work, I think the level of viewership and just how important people are gonna pay close attention to the whole thing is heightened by so many levels that, like, you have to be ready at all times. You have to be hitting home runs throughout the whole thing, because this is a really important thing in a lot of things. This has been one of the most biggest animated films in a long time. I want to say maybe the last one was Dark Knight Returns. I remember when that film was announced, that was so much anticipation, so many people wanting to see that done and come to life. So this is a very important thing, and I fully understand that. But I think you still have to take it as any other body of work, and you have to critique it as such. So with that out of the way, let's just jump straight into it. So, Batman the Killing Joke, the animated feature, is essentially comprised of two different stories. The Killing Joke itself, the story, isn't long enough to hold a whole, hour and a half movie. So they decided to expand on that by kind of giving a prologue story. And in the prologue story, it focuses on Batgirl, right? And I believe that the idea behind this is to kind of create a much more emotional connection to Batgirl. So come the fateful scene in the Killing Joke, it has so much more weight, so much more gravity behind that. So in this review, I will talk about both stories like separate little movies in their own separate worlds. There will be an overlapping kind of theme or connection because Batgirl obviously is the main focus of the first prologue story, and she does show up in the actual Killing Joke story. So there is going to be certain things that tie back and kind of put them all together. But for the most part, I will kind of view these as two separate things. So up first is the prologue story. I don't believe it has a title. I think the movie just starts with it, and later on, eventually, it goes into Killing Joke. But in this prologue story, it's an adventure, or an adventure of Batgirl, and it kind of focuses on her relationship with Batman and her as a crime fighter. They introduced this new kind of antagonist who he's I'm kind of stumbling on my words, but he's basically a psychopath, right? A psychopath who's in a crush or in love with Batgirl, and he does all these crazy things to gain her attention, which it essentially stresses her out and makes her life outside of the Batgirl persona a little difficult for her. The antagonist, I felt they were kind of, I guess, maybe setting him up to be a Joker type of role to Batgirl. There is this one line where Batman himself says he hasn't dealt with, I guess, a crazy person like him in a long time, and I think that was in reference to Joker. So I think they wanted to kind of set up the similarity of this kind of chaotic force against this hero. And in the story, Batgirl, she's kind of dealing with this whole trying to be partners with Batman, but at the same time having some type of romantic relationship with him. And it all just really gets super complicated because this antagonist, I believe his name was Prince Paris France, right? So as Paris kept, creating a lot of chaos, Batman wanted Batgirl to separate herself from the entire mission and just leave it up to Batman and the police to take care of it. And Batgirl is, in that classic sidekick role where it's like, hey, you can't just push me off to the side. I'm just as valuable as you. We're a partnership, you need to value me as your equal. And of course, Batman doesn't see her as an equal, mainly because he feels that she still takes everything a little too much of a joke. It's still a thrill for her. She doesn't really see the importance of what crime fighting does. This is a life or death situation, right? So he thinks she's taking it a little lightly in general. I'm kind of going into detail because there's so many things happening at the same time, and I'm trying to kind of break it all in my head, and really, I feel like the story failed just because even though, there are the clear setups, right? There is this very, let's say evil force, Princess's evil force, and you see how she's struggling to kind of, to prove herself as a hero, but at the same time stop him by herself, right? But they mix in this weird romantic relationship with Batman, and ultimately, I feel they make her into a very negative stereotype of a woman. There's a lot of scenes where she's at the library and she's talking to her friend about this guy who's in, yoga class, and she's, in this kind of weird relationship where they're kind of an item and they're not. And this is all in reference to Batman. And so every time she's alone with him, there is a frustration, but because the audience knows, oh, she wants to be, I guess, in as a couple with her, with him. It to me, it just seems more of a weird sexual tension, and they have it's really weird because for the whole movie, she wants to, I guess, please Batman so that he could be happy and, I guess, see her as a woman and kind of fall in love. I'm guessing that's what she wanted. But eventually this whole thing leads into them having sex, and then it becomes really awkward with them, and she regrets it all, and she wishes it never happened. And I don't know, to me it just felt like a very negative stereotype to a woman. They essentially made her this kind of corny girl who is going after this guy, right? Wants nothing more than to be with him, and then once they're together and she sees it's not working out, it's not a happy ending, she regrets it all, and she just wishes everything goes back to the same. And so even though that wasn't the focus of the film, of that little feature, that little prologue story, and the focus was, her, getting to the edge of what it really means to be a crime fighter, or what it really means to kind of put your life on the line to really save the city, right, essentially. I think those kind of like I said, that romantic thing was just so noticeable and just overlapping to everything. Nothing else really mattered, And I think that's a huge disappointment. They kind of ruined Batgirl for me. I'm not the biggest Batgirl fan, but I like the character a lot, and I always enjoyed her in the stories. If she was a part of the Batman family, or if she was on her own, or with the Birds of Prey, or whatever, Batgirl was always a cool character to me, and I've never really seen her like this, right? Her relationship with Batman is definitely weird, right? It's not something I like, but I know there is some precedence and there is a bit of history behind that, and there are people who don't mind it and actually like it. So to each their own. But like even my relationship with her, I've always seen her with Dick Grayson, right, or just a separate male character. But I never seen her, essentially so horny for someone, and so it was really weird to see that, and I felt that ultimately stripped her of so many values. This should have been a coming hero story, a story where she understands the importance of crime fighting and what it takes to be a crime fighter. But I don't feel like we ever got that payoff. She essentially retires at the end of the prologue story, but it really felt just like, hey, if you don't want to be my boyfriend, then there's no point in us continuing to see each other. That's how it felt, right? And again, my opinion. Feel free to disagree with me. To each their own, like I said. But that was the prologue story. The Killing Joke stuff, man, there's just. I came out. I watched this in theater. I went to the Brandon Events screening, and I wasn't a huge fan of the Killing Joke. To me, a lot of people have always told me this is, super important. This is a cult classic. That, if you like Batman, you need to read this. This is like a mandatory Batman thing. And so I'm still relatively new to comics, but I knew like there's just certain books you have to read. And so I remember when I read this, I was expecting this, tremendous story that was just going to change my whole concept and view of the Joker. And it didn't, right? To me, I always feel the Killing Joke is overrated, and again, if you're a big fan of it, I'm not attacking you, I just don't feel this is that great of a story or is the be-all, end-all of Joker and Batman, right? I fully respect the story, and I fully, see the importance of it, not only between the relationship with Batman and Joker, but just the comic book industry as a whole. And me personally, this is my definitive origin for Joker. Anything else, I feel like that's an Elseworld story, or that's, sure, whatever. But to me, Killing Joke is the definitive origin of the Joker. And so I do still take it in high regard, and it's still, I have a copy, and it's still a part of, my little graphic novel collection and library, if you will. But I'm just not overly ecstatic of the book. And so going into this film, knowing that, Bruce Timm, Mark Hamill, Kevin Conroy, Tara Strong, all of these people who were a part of Batman the Anime Series were a part of this, I was really hoping that they were going to make me fall in love with the story, and I was finally going to understand why so many people were just crazy about this story. And so maybe I was a little overhyped for this. Maybe I put too much weight on the whole project as itself, but ultimately I felt like it didn't deliver. Now, it's not to say it's not to say the film is bad. I think they did a very adequate job at kind of adapting this into an actual feature film. But it just, to me, it kind of fell a little flat and just, short from what they really decided, Like I said in the beginning, this is a very important story, and so this is not just going to be seen as another Batman cartoon or another, whatever. This is the Killing Joke. This is going to live on in history, and it has already a built-in legacy, so you have to do a good job. And overall, I think, they did it well. If anybody had a great opportunity and a great chance to really bring this to life, they had the best one. They had the voices, they had the talent, it was animated, so there was nothing like you have to hold it back because of live action. It was rated R. Like, all the stars were aligned. They had the best shot anybody, anywhere, in any time is going to have. And I just don't think they fully delivered on that promise. And there's so many things I want to talk about. There's so many kind of more negatives than positives. So this at times might feel like a rant. But like I said, it's still a good film. I still recommend people to go watch it because it's such an important thing. And obviously, if you're a fan of The Killing Joke, you know, you're not even looking at this review. You already saw it, right? Um, but yeah, let's start with the animation first because a picture is worth 1,000 words. A motion picture is worth so much more. The animation itself, I thought was very, very poor, right? Now, here's the thing. I'm not attacking the studio. I'm not attacking the animators. I just feel like this should have been a film that had a higher budget and it should have had a much more premium animation. To be quite honest, this felt like I was watching a Scooby-Doo cartoon. If you guys watch a lot of the kind of Scooby-Doo animated movies that come out now, it has a certain art style so that all the stories, all the adventures work within the same world, and they can get it out in a certain amount of time to make profit, right? And I felt this was the same animation, and that kind of pulled me aback because, again, Killing Joke, such an important property, this should have a premium budget. This should have, the budget where it's like, go and get the best animators to match the kind of gravity of this book. And to me, it felt flat. It felt like like I said, it felt like a Scooby-Doo cartoon, and it really it really made me really weird and kind of threw me for a loop because every time I would see something, I was just like, Scooby-Doo can be pretty dark, I guess. And personally, the backstory where it's like Joker and this is like his origin, where the whole story of him and his wife. I all I could think of was like, this kind of looks like Shaggy was a buzz cut, and so it was again really weird. And I'm not trying to make fun of no one. I do not know the first thing about working in animation or all that. I just didn't feel this animation matched the tone of the book and what they were trying to set out. I also felt that the animation itself was very choppy, and it was choppy in the sense that there was this overall thing, right? There was this overall presence and this overall standard, but there was a lot of times where the background was static, and it was just noticeable as day because everything else would be frozen and you would just see the Joker talk. And yes, that's how cartoon works, but a good cartoon still has background characters, or just the background itself feel alive. So this feels like a living, breathing movie, and it's not a cartoon. It's, like I said, a feature film. And I think Killing Joke did not do that. There was too many times where it really felt like a motion comic where this person had a line, he's the one animated, he's the one talking, he would freeze, next person starts animated, next person starts, talking and whatnot. And it was really weird because, again, you have a history of animated films, regardless if you're adapting a story, or you're making a unique story in a unique world. They've done better animation, so I was really surprised why they took these choices. And maybe this was an art style and an art direction that they were going for. Maybe they were going for a motion comic to bring it that much more alive, and it just flew over my head. I don't know, but I'm telling you guys as I take it in and as I approach it. There were also a lot of scenes where I felt like they spent a lot of extra time to make sure it looked perfect. Right? They try to animate certain actual panels from the comic to make it to kind of see the similarities and be like, hey, this is the same story come to life. And the problem with that is that because they spent so much time animating these certain scenes, it just showed how, in my opinion, in my words, how awful the rest of the animation was. And so it was, to me personally, just this quality control where certain things, right, certain moments where I know they're very important moments were super high up and just up to the utmost detail, and then the rest of the film just felt like I said, a Scooby-Doo cartoon. So that was very what's the word? Very perplexing. Man, I can't even speak. That's how kind of how frustrated I am with all this stuff. Now, I don't want to, be constantly attacking one thing. So again, I'm not attacking anybody. I'm not saying anybody's awful or they did a bad job. I'm just saying, what I think and what I see. So don't take this the wrong way. But the voice talent, I was disappointed in, right? Mark Hamill, Kevin Conroy, Tara Strong, um, they're all great voice talents, and they all have a rich legacy to themselves, not just as a group, not just Batman the Animated Series. All of them have done tremendous work. They have tremendous body of work. They've voiced characters that will always live on in history as some of people's favorites and not. But I didn't feel this was the best performance they could have done. And again, the only reason I'm looking at it like this because Mark Hamill was always somebody who's like, I come back and play the Joker if I can play Killing Joke. Like he always held it at this very high regard where he will like knock it out of the park and it'd be a completely different Joker that we've ever seen. And I just felt he didn't deliver, right? I felt like the overall voice talent was very flat. And it's not that they weren't animated, they weren't enthusiastic or involved in it, but it didn't feel like an honest to God performance. It almost felt like an audiobook, right? And it's hard to put into words because this is the defining Joker, this is the defining Batman, and really, as soon as they start, they're already starting at an A level, like, there's nowhere to go, but it's just, I don't know, I didn't feel it kind of like an emotional delivery with every line, right? I felt that a lot of the lines were just kind of put out there. There wasn't this kind of build up. There wasn't this very kind of gravitational thing, right? There wasn't this, it's just hard to put into words. Like I said, it felt like an audiobook to me. It felt like I could kind of play this movie in the background and look at the actual graphic novel and get the same feeling between watching the feature film and just listening to the audio. Like that's just how bland it was to me personally. Again, I'm not attacking Mark Hamill, not attacking Kevin Conroy. They will still and forever be the defining Joker and defining Batman. I just feel they underdelivered. I feel like this was your big moment, and this was your big cherry on top that was just gonna, there's no longer ever gonna be a discussion on who should be the voice of Batman, who should be the voice of Joker. And I feel like you guys kind of dropped the ball a little bit. Like you guys still did great, because you guys are Batman and Joker. How can you not do good? I just felt you guys weren't at the level that I think this needed to really make it a well-rounded film. That's how I felt. Like I said, I felt like they were really just reading the book to me. So again, that was a little bit of disappointing to me. That whole theater room, when everybody was leaving, all you kept overhearing was, "Oh, Mark Hamill nailed it," and they did an awesome job and all that. So this is, I'm in the minority in this. A lot of people did like it, and I fully respect that and I fully understand it. Me personally, it just didn't satisfy me and didn't live up to, I guess, the build up in my head. I also think some of the kind of voice choices they chose for like Commissioner Gordon, for Harvey Bullock, were a little off and a little weird. I didn't think they matched those characters particularly. So that was a little off-putting. Like, you would hear Mark Hamill, you would hear Kevin Conroy, and then all of a sudden you would hear Jim Gordon, and it's just like, buddy, you're not even in the same scene. That's how weird it felt to me. I wasn't satisfied with the voice actors they chose for those roles. Again, it's not a big thing because there's a lot of animated films where I would have cast differently, but it's just something that was really noticeable because, like I said, their performances weren't as great as I would have loved it. And right now that I'm on the subject of it, I talked about how like it felt flat and I felt they just delivered certain scenes. There's a lot of very iconic moments in The Killing Joke, right? And I think they were just presented in the film like, like here it is. One scene that kind of stuck out to me was like in the graphic novel when Batman and Barbara Gordon are in the hospital alone. Barbara wakes up and she's petrified that she kind of hugs Batman and she's like utterly scared of what just happened and what might happen to her father, because it's like, he's a maniac and he just kidnapped my father. In the film, she's just lying on her bed, and you could see this, this very emotional expression she has on her face, and it's very, she is clearly terrified, but because she's just lying on the bed, it felt like nothing. And so that's kind of some of the downfalls that I felt that were just, pretty much put out there. The big ending scene where like Batman is, his last kind of like reaching out to Joker, being like, work with me, I can help you rehabilitate, you don't have to be alone. And then Joker turns around and says, no, like that's too far gone for me. I felt that was another scene that was just kind of put out there. I really thought that scene needed a lot of more emotion, a lot of more gravity to the whole thing. Even though the body of work that they're working on is a very impactful, just because there's so much history between Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill, I felt like that whole scene should have felt a lot more weightier. And it just, again, fell flat. I felt like they just put it out there to put it out there. So it's just certain things where I just, overall, I thought it was kind of, and again, it sounds really negative and it sounds like I'm hating on the film, but I felt like it was a bit of amateur hour. It's like you were supposed to bring your top stars, your top talent to this, and you just brought, whoever you could spare. So that's how I personally feel. Again, you have every right to disagree with me. It's your opinion. You are just as right as me, and I am just as wrong as you. So take that as you will. I don't really want to constantly be talking about negatives. Overall, I didn't like the film. I think that's very clearly stated, was just how I'm talking about it in regards to multiple things. Personally, like I said, I wasn't a fan of Killing Joke, but I was a fan of the anime series, and I really wanted them to kind of make me fall in love with the story. I wanted to finally understand why so many people held the Killing Joke in such a high regard. Like I said, this is my definitive Joker origin, but to me, it's just another Joker story. It's not this be-all, end-all, and I really wanted them to deliver that for me. I wanted them to really show me this is why Killing Joke is so important, and I felt they underperformed and personally just didn't deliver, right? And again, that could just be me. That could be the hype that I built up in my head. But that's, ultimately very disappointing, just personally. I went with my sister, and she kept turning to me and kept saying that, oh, every time I saw you, you had this face like you were getting more annoyed and more depressed. And I was like, in my head, I was just like, yeah, of course, because, this was a movie and a story I was really looking forward to, because, like I said, I wanted to know why it's so important, and if anybody could have done that for me, it was them, and they didn't. So, ultimately, the movie was, like I said, a disappointment to me. The room I was in, the crowd, they applauded. They, just because everybody's talking, you can overhear them. A lot of people were like, Mark Hamill nailed it. Batman, Kevin Conroy was on point. The story was amazing. They delivered what I wanted. So the majority or the popular opinion in the room I was in, definitely liked it, definitely enjoyed it. Me personally, I just didn't. So if you're a fan of Killing Joke, go watch it, because you're a fan of Killing Joke, and nothing I say is going to change that. If you're interested in Batman or in Joker, go watch it, because this is a very important story in their history, and just what really defines the character, both separate and together as kind of enemies. Like, no matter what I say, whatever your viewpoint is, I'm gonna say go watch it, because it's that important, and I fully recognize it. To me, it's not a bad movie. Well, I guess it was a bad movie to me, but I fully understand that it was a good movie, and it was a very faithful adaptation, in my opinion. Just to give you guys a little bit of some positives here, right, to end on a good note. I thought some of the scenes to extend the kind of Batman arriving at the carnival, I thought that was very what's the word? It was just smart in how they kind of extended that scene, and the musical number, right, when Joker's singing in that kind of weird roller coaster that Jim Gordon's in, I thought they nailed it. That was something where I just, every time I read the story, I could never get it as a song, and Mark Hamill was able to give me that, so that's really great. But yeah, that's my view on the whole film. It's not popular. People are gonna attack me for this, but I can't change my view on it. That's how I feel. Like I said, it's still a very important film, and I think it's gonna hold up to a lot of people's expectations, a lot of standards. It was just a little underwhelming for me. So there you guys have it. Please comment down below and let me know your guys' thoughts and opinion on this. This is something I really want to know. Like I said, my theater room were excited and they loved it. Me personally, I didn't. So if you're a fan of this, if you like the film, please let me know. What am I getting wrong? What am I, what am I not understanding essentially? And if you disagree with, if you didn't like the film and you agree with me, let me know too. Maybe there was something we both just didn't understand. We can help each other out. Like the video, guys. Like it. I know a lot of you are gonna dislike it, so go ahead and dislike it, and just subscribe and look forward to more videos, guys. Thanks. Laters.